All right, I went ahead and so this is lab 8-3, and I went ahead and already headed to the tinyurl.com slash xbrl ratios page, and so we're on this um, screen. So we want to make a copy of this. So make a copy of. I just want to delete that, save it to my drive, make a copy. Private only to me. Last said it a second ago, so it should be my own worksheet. So we're gonna want to go ahead and change this Apple to Tesla, TSLA. Enter. Everything is loading. You see Tesla Inc. here and new numbers. So that is working. So we want to put 2019 within here. And so it's loading. Records are being updated. So I have year, but we want fiscal year. So for fiscal year, let it all load again. And so these are the companies that are compared to this one, Tesla. So we want to grab two companies that are within the same industry. So I'm going to go ahead and put in Ford, no, not Facebook, and General Motors. Okay. General Motors, Ford more Ford more more Ford more motor Ford Motor. Okay, all right. I just forgot how to speak for a second. Sorry. Ford Motor Company and then General Motors Company. And so we have the updated numbers here. All right, so we are to answer question 3 through 7. And so looking at question 3, it says review the 14 financial ratios shown across the tabs and make some conclusions or judgments about the values, trends, or comparisons to the other companies. For example, if one company has a significantly higher debt to equity ratio than the other two, what might be driving this? All right, so I'm gonna head over back to, I believe this is mine, that one. Yeah, that one, this shows that it is not my copy, plus it doesn't have the information I just put in. And so going over to my copy, gonna head over to liquidity. Here you can see that Tesla's liquidity ratio has increased over the years. Same as for quick ratio. You could see compared to General Motors and Ford, that Tesla is higher. Well, actually, Ford is pretty close up there with Tesla. See, but it is higher than General Motors, and the average, and for the quick ratio, it is also higher than, well, actually, like twice as much higher than Ford and General Motors. And so basically, for the current ratio, it just basically says that Tesla and Ford are both pretty liquid, I guess. So if worst comes to worst, Tesla finds itself in a tough position, they could sell their assets and they'll be able to cover their short-term liability. And that's what basically these two just show. And I mean, that's pretty, that's a pretty, what am I trying to say? Well, I know what I'm trying to say, I just don't know how to say it. I just want to say that, I mean, these motor companies, they have a lot of um, materials that are pretty valuable when making that go. Like the materials that go into making a car are pretty valuable, and so it'd be pretty reasonable to think that these two, Ford and Tesla, are both pretty liquid when it comes to their assets. All right, we are back and looking at the financing ratios. We see that Tesla has a um, pretty good ratio, I would say, compared to the rest of the market or Ford and General Motors. Just because you don't want a debt to equity ratio that is too high, because that just raises red flags. Um, you probably have too many liabilities that your equity could cover, and so that's not good. Um, and yeah, I mean, if you just looking at this right here, times interest earned. This is net income, interest expense plus net income taxes over interest expense. I mean, that's a pretty big comparison from 0.03 to 10.5. I think, and so I think what we're looking at is 0.03 is something that's not so good, but looking back at 2017, it's negative. So, I mean, at least it's going up. Basically just shows uh, how many times a company can pay its interest expense with its pre-tax income or earnings. And so it's coming up over the years. And so that's a good sign. And then finally, looking at activity, one thing to note is that Tesla's asset turnover has gone up, nearly doubled. And I mean, that just means you have more net sales, which is driving this ratio up. And I mean, basically, that's what you want. I mean, it's already over Ford and General Motors, both companies, two companies that have been in the industry for a very long time compared to Tesla. And so that's also a good sign for Tesla. So that is question 3. Question 4: has the company you are analyzing seen any major changes in its ratios in the past 2 years? Which of the 3 companies is most liquid in the most current year? So basically, we already kind of looked at that. I did say that the asset turnover did nearly double, which is a pretty big change. In financing, it went from negative. I mean, the in times interest earned went from negative to positive, and so that's pretty good. At least it's going up. And in liquidity, let's see, I believe it was quick ratio. Quick ratio has a considerable increase. And so that just means they have more assets, or their assets compared, or the current assets compared to the current liabilities is larger. And I think for the, what was the second part of the question, which of the 3 companies is the most liquid in the current year? So this is what we want to look at. Comparing in the current ratio, Ford has a higher current ratio, but in the quick ratio, Tesla has nearly double the ratio of Ford and General Motors. So I'd probably say Tesla just because, I mean, it is pretty close from Tesla to Ford. It's a 0.03 difference, but the quick ratio is like double that of Ford and General Motors. So I would say Tesla's probably the most liquid out of all three companies. Let's see, question 5. How has your company managed short-term liabilities over the past 3 years? Let's see, short-term liabilities. I wish this would, I wonder if there is another one. Profitability, okay. I just couldn't see that what was behind there. And so we're looking at short-term liabilities, financing. I think this is, yeah, this is long-term. So, I mean, I think we could probably look at it from here just because current ratio and quick ratio, they both use current liabilities as the denominator. And so we want to look at how a company has managed their current liabilities or short-term liabilities. It looks as if, I mean, just through looking at this, either short-term liabilities decreased and cash and accounts receivable stayed the same or comparable or comparable, or current liabilities stayed the same and cash or current assets went up. And so if we look over here, Tesla current liabilities, we can see there was an increase for sure. Within a span of 4 years, there was current liabilities almost doubled, but they're from so 2016 to 2018, their current assets were basically the same until 2019 when it just like blew up and just grew their short-term, their current assets. But we're focused on current liabilities, and I mean, they've gone up, but I don't think that's a problem just because, I mean, they're also making a lot more money or sales. You can see in 2016, they had 7,000, went all the way to 24,000. And so that's like literally 3 times as much, whereas their liabilities just doubled. Lost it, but yeah, their liabilities just doubled. See, question 6, analyze liquidity, profitability, plans, financing, and activity for your company. Where is it strong? So I think the only ones we haven't looked at is profitability. Let me look at it real quick. Income and sales. So it's negative. Negative return on assets is negative. Return on equity is also negative. Equity multiplier. Total assets. Okay. So I have 5 times as much total assets as they do equity. So the ratios don't look as great for profitability, but I wouldn't really stress about it just because of their increase in just a short amount of time. And their profitability, I mean, the amount of Teslas you see outside in the streets have drastically increased. So that's profitability activity ratios. You know, we kind of already looked at some of these, but for the most part, it's pretty It varies from ratio to ratio compared to the Ford and General Motors, but I mean, most of these are pretty good. Cost of goods sold over average inventory. Cost of goods sold, average inventory. Okay. Trend. So this has gone up and then down. That may have just been attributed to a change in accounts receivable, but overall, Tesla's doing pretty good, and I mean they're definitely liquid, so they'll be able to cover their short-term liabilities, and they also have an okay. Well, I'd say they have an okay debt to equity ratio and times interest earned ratio. I haven't seen that used a lot, but it is increasing, so I wouldn't, you know, make that a red flag. And activity, we just went over that. Okay, so for the last question, consider the dew point framework to interpret the results and make sure you make a judgment about your company financial position based upon the data. So, all right, so let's see. Here we see, oh, what am I doing? That's not what I'm doing. So question 7, I consider the DuPont framework. I had set dew point before DuPont. So headed back to our Google Sheets worksheet. We see that the DuPont framework ratio, or looks like return on equity, is negative, but their trends are increasing, and so as much as the negative 0.13 doesn't look too good, I do believe Tesla is going up in their value, like market value. And I'm not talking about their cars. I'm talking about like Tesla as a company. And so what you want is something closer to like this General Motors 0.17. So let me just look at the question real quick. So yeah, overall, basically, I would just say Tesla is in a position where they are getting better at being profitable and just being the best company that they can be. But I think most of their issues revolve around cost, since they are some of the only ones. Well, first of all, electric cars are fairly new, with respect to the way like the quality that like Tesla is providing for electric cars. They're not fairly new. Well, they're relatively new, compared to like regular cars, non-electric cars. And so I think part of the problem is because of that. I feel like as time goes by, it'll just make it less expensive to produce cars, and their profits are just going to be fine, as they have been increasing for the past few years. So that is lab 8-3. Sorry. Thank you.